Welcome to another edition of Creeping Screams. I'm Art of Blood, minus Danny, my cameraman. He had other things today, so he's not here. There's no commentary from him. But what you're about to see on today's episode is Stacey Voss, author of Thunder and Blood. She did a autograph signing and reading at Waverley Library here in Thunder Bay. So I was there, I videotaped it, best to my ability, which I have to say I have the worst camera abilities on the planet. But sit back, enjoy the show. Creeping Screams.
Her was afraid that he would be offended at her words, and part of her was happy to be able to speak her mind without her emotions being tampered with. Lord Raddick looked down at the floor. You're right. I do not have a lot of friends. None, actually. I have not had a real friend for over 500 years. But you remind me of someone from my childhood, someone who was very special to me. You remind me what it was like to have someone to talk to share things with. 500 years. She knew that vampires were supposed to be immortal, but he looked like he was no more than 30 years old. You know what I am. I have seen the recognition in your eyes. Do you have vampires in your world? Only in stories. They aren't real. At least not where I come from. Well, in this world we are real, and we have ruled this world for over 500 years. We take care of the human populations under us, and in return, they give us the gift of their blood. I haven't given you anything, Christine blurted at him. You've taken it from me. I don't call that a gift. That's stealing. It's like rape. Lord Raddick seemed to shrink within himself a bit as she shouted at him. Then a small smile crossed his face, and he looked back up at her. Normally, I would never let anybody speak to me like that. They would not dare. I would bring them on the spot, and they would never speak again. But when you speak to me like that, however, I feel ashamed. You look so very much like her. She would be horrified to see what I had become. The humans could not resist us, and their numbers shrunk very rapidly. Conflict started to grow between groups of vampires as the numbers of our food source shrank. There was a great battle, and in order to regain our strength, the humans were fed on even more. It was at this time that the fogs first arrived. No one knows exactly what caused it, but some say that it was a great vampire prophet who saw us as a beautiful race and saw that we had potential for greatness if we did not destroy ourselves first. Humans started coming through the fogs, which appeared around the world at specific locations once a month. With our food supply rejuvenated, the conflict died down, and a form of global government was formed. Close to each fog gate, a settlement was created. A vampire was put in charge of each settlement to rule as they see fit. They are bound by only one rule. No other vampires can be made without permission of the Vampire Council. So we each have our place where we are as gods to our human subjects, but solitary in our existence. Christine was having a hard time processing all of the new information. This world was so very different from her own.
I'd like to know, I haven't read the book, and I hope this will give things away, I hope not, but I'd like to know what sort of landmarks in Thunder Bay are included in your book.
Well, the sleeping giant is very prominent. Like, it's on the cover. If you look at the cover, we have the green eyes, which are a prominent symbol recurring in the book, and the sleeping giant. when Radek said, you know, when you looked out your window and you saw the landmass across the bay, it was the sleeping giant. The book opens with the sleeping giant, and it appears several times in the book. I talk about Rydens in there once, and yeah, I'm waiting to see how I can slip some other things in next time. Because I think it's important to put things in, like where are most vampire books set? Maybe places like New Orleans.
As you just said, in the United States, so it's critical that they put one right.
Yeah, well, I was living in Germany at the time, and I was very, very homesick. So when I wrote, it just naturally wrote about the place that I was. And I
wondered how much in the book do you go into how having like a society constructed around like the vampire lord and the people who are subservient to them, like how does that work around the world in terms of?
You get into it somewhat here. You hear it from two different sides. Like you heard Radek's, part of Radek's version of it. There's another vampire that he mentioned, the renegade, Pillar. He describes it, I think, probably a little more honestly. In the sequel, you'll hear more about it. I could have gotten really into depth with it, but then it would just be like a textbook. So I had to try and include as much as I could within the dialogue without overwhelming it. And it's hard for me because I know all of the structure of it and how it all works, but I never really remember as much as in there.
You don't actually call it Thunder Bay, the
No.
parallel. You call it Donner. What
Yes.
made you choose that?
Donner is the German word for thunder. A vampire requires more sustenance. In return for my protection and rulership, my subjects each give me a gift of blood one or more times a year. It has become our way of life. Our whole economic system is based on the Geschenk, the gift of life. Christine didn't know how to feel about this information. It was all so different from the way of life she knew. Don't the humans hate it? Lord Radek looked surprised at the question. No. It is the way things are. It may seem very different from the world you know. But for them, it is the way things have always been. They benefit from the situation too, however. Do people still die from disease in your world? Christine told about the AIDS epidemic, the SARS scare from a few years ago, and the random outbreaks of Ebola in African regions. There was bird flu outbreaks and mad cow disease all over the world as well. Yes, we have found cures for many of the old diseases through science, but more show up all the time. Especially the idea of the Geschenk. The Geschenk is a unit, a currency unit, and it's a unit of blood. So blood is currency in this world. They don't use money. They just use blood, which is not necessarily, if you think about it in a way, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Everybody has blood. So there's no reason to starve. So, but yes.
Have you thought about introducing from another parallel world, another vampire coming through the fog?
No, but now I have. See, we're trying to think of new ways of continuing the story. So basically what I've got right now is Thunder and Blood, which is the first one. Thunder and Ice, which continues where that one left off. And then I have two prequels. The first one going back to the 1500s, and it actually tells Da Vinci's story, because in my book, Da Vinci's a vampire.
I told you my camera work was crappy. But Stacey Voss's book is available online on her official website, www.thunderandblood.com, as well as amazon.com. Till next time, creeping screams.